Loving.
Michigan, this is Barack Obama. I want to talk with you about the Alyssa Slotkin I know. Alyssa is a true public servant who has dedicated her career to serving the American people, no matter who is in the White House. I saw that leadership and character up close. Alyssa is the kind of leader we need. Tough, independent, and effective. She'll get the job done. And she will make you proud.
I'm Alyssa Slotkin, and I approve this message.
Hello, Detroit. Election Day is November 5th, but why wait? Beginning Saturday, October 19th, you can vote early at one of Detroit's 14 early vote centers. Early voting runs through Sunday, November 3rd, so let your voice be heard and vote early. If you're voting by absentee ballot, return your ballot as soon as possible. For more information, visit our website or give us a call. And remember to vote, because it's not only your right, it's the right thing to do.
No more commercials? Okay.
That's it. We're going to split them up a little bit because we got maybe in about 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. Hello there, and welcome to the week that was. Deadline Detroit, still beating heart of the beating heart of a dormant and yet still powerful Deadline Detroit.
Breaking
Nancy
stories
Derringer,
still.
and I am filling in for the much more glib and expressive Saeed Khan, who is traveling this week.
You're plenty glib.
I do my best, but I'm no broadcaster. So, we should have given this job to one of our guests here, which I'll introduce in just a second. Joining me here, we have on row number 2, our stellar troika of lawyers who are still in negotiation for the lease of their new law firm in Grosse Pointe. It's called Two Jews and a Palestinian, and that is, of course, directly below me, Joel Sklar, Steve Fishman, and Bill Seikaly. And if you want to know which one is the Palestinian, it will be revealed shortly. We also have former, now retired Fox 2 anchor, the smoothest talking man in Detroit, next to the other guy that we're going to talk about later, Huel Perkins. Welcome, Huel. Labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, coming in from Oakland County, and down at the bottom, holding us all up as though Atlas with the world on his shoulders, Allan Lengel, co-founder of Deadline Detroit. So once again, it was another week to turn everyone's hair white. It just keeps getting more intense as we get closer to the election. I, for one, don't know if I can handle the stress for much longer. I have taken to rewatching television shows that I have watched 17,000 times already just because they're comforting. I'm in season 1 of Mad Men right now, if anybody wants to join me in the discussion of that. Let's go to topic A, which is on everybody's mind, which is, of course, the upcoming presidential election. And Kamala Harris has answered the critics who say she has shrunk from media scrutiny, and she is hitting the circuit. She did a podcast with Charlemagne the God, which is one of those names that makes me feel like I'm 10,000 years old. I've never heard his podcast before. And she's
His real name is Leonard, by the way. Leonard McElvey. But anyway.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad somebody knows this. And also she went into the belly of the beast and sat down with the enemy, Fox News, with Brett Baer. And of course, he's whining like a little bitch and claiming she was late and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, let's take it away with how we think this went over. I mean, I know that at least, let's see, there are 7 of us here, and I know at least 6 of us are probably Democrats. But I really am interested if anybody can come up with like a sober, clear-minded take of how you thought she came off on this. Anyone? Hey, Steve.
Well, I didn't watch the entirety of either. First thing I wanted to say, I'm not big on all the young people stuff, but this guy, Charlemagne the God, I was impressed with the way he asked questions and the fact that he knew what he was talking about. He's no fool, that guy. And I thought she did a real good job with him. Bear, I thought she did it perfect, quite frankly. She didn't take the bait of turning around and trying to say that everybody that votes for Trump is an asshole or a deplorable like Hillary did. And she fronted him off when he lied his ass off and left out the part about the enemy within. She called him right out on it. And I thought it really made him look bad.
This was on Fox, right? This was
he actually apologized.
right there.
I didn't see it on Fox. All I saw was maybe Nicole Wallace's show or something like that. But Eugene Robinson had a column in the Washington Post this morning, and I agreed with him. He said that if we win, and I'm going to say when we win, they should send a thing of roses to Bret Baier because he really helped out. My understanding is there were 7.5 million people that watched that. And if that's the case, not all of those people are crazed MAGA people. You got to figure there's people who get their news from there. And keep in mind, you got to remember, and this was in Eugene's column as well, you got to remember that what they put out there every day, with those of us who don't watch it, they put out this vision of Kamala Harris like she's can't speak and she's a fool and she's this. And these people, not the crazy ones, but the ones who are, lean to the right, I think they got an opportunity to see this is no fool. This is a regular human being who gives a shit about you and me and everybody else. And I think that it did her a huge favor. And we should compliment, of course, Mayor Pete, because he's the one that started that stuff going on Fox News and tearing their butt up and making their own audience applaud for him. So that was my take on it.
Mayor Pete is like a kitten or a panther batting around a puppy. He's so good at that. It's like they should just have a new cabinet position for him called the secretary of going on Fox News and making them look like idiots, because he's really, really good at it.
Huel, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, that's what I want to hear, what Huel says.
I'm a pessimist. A pessimist.
Okay.
But please remember this. I did not expect Barack Obama to win. I did not expect Donald Trump to win. But I am very afraid of what's going to happen. And I do not believe that interview moved the needle in any way. I am still hoping and praying for some October surprise that will change my estimation of what's to come. But it's dire right now. Because we are living in what, for me, is like the end of Reconstruction, when whites again took over the South. We're seeing that again in this country. Mm-hmm. The appeal of Donald Trump is that whites will again regain their rightful status in
white men,
especially to white men.
Yeah.
And so I think Kamala did a good job. Bret, I think, is the only somewhat objective professional journalist on the Fox News staff. And he frequently talked over her, but she handled it well. But it will not move the needle significantly in the 7 states that will decide this election. So good show, good job, but it won't change anything.
Okay. Well, did anyone see any of the Univision or town hall, they called it, that Donald Trump did on that show, which is, of course, the primarily Spanish language cable show out of, go ahead, Steve.
Again, I didn't see the actual show, but it was shown on MSNBC. And the guy, I can't remember his name, was Gonzalez, but it was a Latino guy. And he confronted Trump. And as far as I was concerned, he absolutely blew him away. He said, I voted for you before. And then he started ticking off the things, January the 6th, the enemy within, talking about what he's going to do in immigration. And Trump, of course, didn't really know what to do about it. And he just kind of started blustering in his usual fashion. But it was
fest. January 6th was love fest.
Love fest, right.
Yeah, a love fest. But I mean, I thought that audience there, and this was a Latino audience, which is what we want. I thought the audience thought Trump was completely full of shit. That's what it looked like to me. But the guy who asked the questions.
My new hero is a woman in the back row who sat there with her arms crossed across her chest and just kind of looked like she was not having it.
Gonzalez's face, he kept going,
yes.
What am I hearing? I mean, and Trump was like burbling away. That was the
interview of him afterwards.
No.
So somebody caught up with him. I saw this late last night. Somebody caught up with him and he said, look, I asked the question, and when I asked it, it was legitimate, but there's no way I'm voting for the man now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I thought it was.
I think what's going on is like it's like a Rubik's Cube. every which way you can turn it, you can argue that Trump's going to win. Every which way you turn it, Kamala's going to win. You can say all these Republicans are finally fed up with him. He's not. Then you can say a lot of the Arab Americans are not going to vote for Kamala. There's a million ways to turn it, but I feel as long as she's working harder than him in this final stretch, I think she can pull it off. It's going to be close, I think, but who knows? It's hard. These polls are so hard to really concretely say. Now, 538 has just come out and said that, I don't know, that Trump's like a half a point ahead in summarizations, but the polls are all different variables of how they do it and stuff like that. It's so hard to tell.
Well, I can't even read them anymore. But Barb, then Steve, then Bill. Go ahead, Barb.
The thing that's beginning to pop up that really is more worrisome than just Trump becoming president again, is this notion that, because it's clear that his brain is melting, right? I mean, it's really it seems clear
to us
that he's running off the rails, and if he makes it far enough to become president, J.D. Vance is going to be president of the United States. Yeah. And as a thinking person, that terrifies me, because he is
dangerous.
I've got a video. I have a video of sort of how off the rails he's become.
Hydrogen is the new car. They say it's great. Has one problem. If it explodes, you're dead. If it explodes, they actually say if it explodes, you're unrecognizable. You call your wife over. They call up the wife, would you please come here and take a look and see whether or not this is your husband? Because we cannot see it. And she goes to the nearest tree, which is about 100 yards away, and she says, no, it's only blood. There's nothing there. She says, I can't tell.
Some believe that if any car explodes, you're dead.
That is, of course, that was not his crowd laughing. That was Jimmy Kimmel's crowd. Right. So anyway, Steve, you had your finger up.
I'm going to take the opposite position of Huel. And I just want to remind you guys, over the last 3 years, you were always asking about Michigan versus Ohio State, whatever it was. And I kept saying, we're going to win, we're going to win, we're going to win. And we won a national championship. And I think we're going to win. The polls, I don't give a shit what that guy at 538, Nate Cohn, and the rest of them say. I don't think the polls mean anything. I think it's
horrible. He was horrible in 2016. He was so
I just think you guys know, how many times have you been called for? I've never been called once, ever.
I finally got it.
No, I've been called once, but I have to tell you how I think that Steve's right, that we can't trust the polls. Huel's right. It's depressing to drive through my neighborhood and see Trump signs up. Mm-hmm. I mean, my heart sinks. It's terrible. We had a condo association meeting. The first item on the agenda was getting rid of all political signs, because neighbors who've gotten along well aren't at the moment. But I want to say this: the reason that I believe that the polls aren't reliable right now is much of the reason why I think we're in trouble in this country generally. Mm-hmm. People no longer trust any of the institutions in this country. They don't trust politics. They don't trust schools. They don't trust the news media. They don't trust pollers. And so I think a lot of people who are answering these polls aren't telling pollsters the truth. I don't know what's going to happen on election day, but I don't think that pollsters, it used to be a big thing. You get called up, you wanted to tell people what your view was. People in this country have become so alienated and distrusting of what we used to hold as sacrosanct institutions. I mean, look, I grew up in a house where when Walter Cronkite came on, everybody shut up because you listen to what Walter Cronkite had to say. Mm-hmm. Now, you turn on Fox. We do that for comedic entertainment, and unfortunately, it's become pervasive. We don't trust any of the news broadcasts.
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah,
Joel,
just one thing. There has been the early voting turnout, certainly in Georgia, has been remarkably high.
Yeah.
Involvement in this election, I think, is going to be greater than it was with Biden and Trump. because there's early voting and people are taking advantage of it. I don't know which way that swings. When I was listening to some of the people who had voted early, people of color were voting for Trump based on immigration. Got to close that border. There were other people, certainly of color and of other stripes, voting for Kamala because of the chaotic mess that Donald Trump brings. But I think it's a positive that we're having such a turnout. It's going to depend upon the ground game, I guess, who's going to win. The Democrats are well funded. You hope to God that ground game that Biden had has gone to Harris, and that's going to determine what happens. It's who's going to get out the vote. People are pretty polarized. There can't be many people left who are thinking, gee, who am I going to go for? At this point, it's done. Just get out, vote, and I think turnout will help the Democrats.
Here's a little video from Atlanta from voting.
Seem to be going smoothly down there in the Peach State so far, according to one Atlanta area voter.
Last time I voted in the city and the lines were out the door. So people honestly just started leaving. But here, no, it was easy.
Okay, that's great. But also, shh, don't let Georgia Republicans hear that voting is easy this year. Okay, they'll put the ballot box at the top of the American Ninja Warrior salmon ladder.
Before we move on, I want to say something about the Univision, because there was the guy that Steve talked about who said, I used to be a Republican and I've lost my vote. I don't trust you. There was another question that also got blurred or clipped a lot. And it was the man who asked the question in Spanish. He needed an interpreter. And He said, I have spent my career picking strawberries and cutting broccoli. Mm-hmm. He was identified as a farmer. And he said, most of the people who do that job are undocumented. If you are elected and fulfill your promise, like you will, to mass deport these people, who is going to do that job, number one? And number two, what is that going to do to the cost of our food? Mm-hmm. And Trump's brain, you could almost see the smoke coming out of his ears, because it was just, the wires were sizzling. He went off on a word salad response. Nobody's been better for farmers than me. We have these crazy people coming in, blah, 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 blah. It's like he never answered the question. And, first of all, I thought those two questions alone shamed a great many reporters who have not been able to ask anything that good, in a public forum for quite some time. But the other thing was, if there's any person of Latino heritage, or even a person who eats food, who could watch that and not think, that guy's got a point. It's like we've become accustomed to enjoying, lettuce from California and broccoli from California and strawberries from Florida year round in our grocery stores. We forget what grocery stores used to be like before there was this vast network of food. And it's like, if you want to spend $15 for a little plastic box of strawberries in March, be my guest. But I'm not voting for the guy who's planning to do that.
I have a question. I mean, we've been bombarded. I think the Free Press was talking about the candidates have made 33 stops since February here, both presidential and vice presidential. And some of the coverage, I think, has been so pedestrian, particularly locally, where, Trump tells all these lies and then he says a couple things. I'm going to have tariffs, and they say tariffs, and they don't challenge. You read it, and it's basically, and I was curious to ask Huel if you followed any of the local coverage of the candidates coming here and your thoughts.
I have not really, but understand that those stops are very controlled. It's not as if local reporters have immediate access to the candidates when they come in.
Right.
They are timed appearances and timed statements. I'm here at this particular business to make this statement because this guy, the owner, is a good friend. I'm going to say, I love you. I love the workers. Let's go. And then he goes off to the next event. And the same is true with Kamala. She'll come in, as she did with Charlamagne the God, do that interview. She went to a locally owned, Black-owned coffee shop in Detroit. But it's not as if during that brief visit, there was time to grill her on policies.
But I'll say this. I covered the speech when Trump was at the Economic Club, and I wrote a column because I just had to let loose a little bit and be more skeptical of some of the tariffs and stuff like that he was talking about. And some of the reporting, you don't see any, even the challenging of his statements. Besides the lies that he tells, they sort of, try to separate the wheat from the chaff there. But even then, they're not challenging, and it's. I mean, some of it's just so repetitive.
And that should begin with the moderator of the event, but he didn't because
they're friends. Yeah.
He was
did you
there
see the Chicago?
Speaking to his base.
Yeah.
So he's not going to challenge Trump at all.
Right.
Did you see the Chicago Economic Club?
Exactly. That was great.
That was where they had the editor of Bloomberg in Chicago come in and do the questioning instead of John Ricolta. Yes. And it was a very different event. And he was polite, he was respectful, but he did not let him get away with this bullshit. Didn't he say something like, I'm going to have a 2,000% tariff on cars made overseas? It's like somebody did the math and said that would make a $35,000 car cost like $700,000.
And repeatedly, that we've analyzed your program and it's not going to work. And what was Trump saying? Well, you're wrong. You're wrong, and the Wall Street Journal is wrong. You're all wrong.
You're all wrong. Yeah, I'm right. The man who's declared bankruptcy 400 times and managed to drive 2 casinos off somewhere. I'm the one who's the genius here. So anyway, okay.
By the way.
Very nice.
I can stand behind that.
Where'd you find that? That's great.
Amazon is selling those.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's tighten our focus on the race for the United States Senate here in Michigan, which is of course Mike Rogers, the Republican, against Alyssa Slotkin, the Democrat, and PS dead week that was advertiser. There was a debate between the two of them. I think there's actually been two now. One was pretty heavily criticized because it was on some outlet that nobody watches. But they did. This was different from the presidential debates. Did anybody watch? Because I did not. Bill.
Yeah, unfortunately, I tend to believe that these are Rorschach's tests again. When you show up to watch the debate, there's plenty to affirm what you believe and about the candidate you support, plenty to affirm about what you're negative about. And I don't know that it moves the needle, not even a little. I thought Alyssa did a nice job. Truth was the greatest casualty in that debate. I think we talked about this last week. Rogers could not stop talking about Alyssa's EV mandates. There is no such thing as an EV mandate. Doesn't exist. Has never existed.
Exactly.
She did vote in support of allowing states to regulate internal combustion engines. I think for pretty good reasons. What I found interesting, I don't see anybody saying this, is, gee, it's really interesting. We can turn a woman's right to choose over to the state, but heaven forbid we should allow regulation of automobiles or guns to go to the
pick and choose.
So, look, I'm a big Slotkin supporter. I think she's great, and I thought she did a good job.
There's a poll.
Interesting. Go ahead.
Politico had a poll. They got a hold of an internal Republican poll, which said that showed that she was actually ahead by 8 percentage points, which is pretty substantial. A lot of money is being poured into the state. He's flooding. Rogers is just flooding and calling her a liar and stuff like that. And those, unfortunately, are probably effective ads. I mean, I think that lead is going to shrink for her, but I think she's going to win. As long as she wins,
who cares? But you want a good reason not to vote for Rogers? If there's anything that would compel me to not vote for him, is the fact that he has taken the knee to Trump and kissed the ring. The fact that he said the right things back on January 6th, but now has completely forgiven him, now has found maybe some problems in the electoral process. That's disgusting. When you are willing to walk away from our democratic institution, when you have his history, you you disqualify yourself, in my opinion.
Rogers, Vance, they've all done the same thing.
Yeah. I agree. I mean,
and
it's so noticeable with him because he's very conservative, but he was a mainstream Republican. He was not a Trumper, and now he has appeared to drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
I can
and
say,
I think, didn't Vance also this week say outright that Trump won the 2020 election?
Yes,
he did. So go ahead.
I can say that I know this, that Mike Rogers does not like Trump at all, and that he only has said these things because he doesn't want Trump coming after him. But it's clear I mean, I've been told that by a reliable person. So
who cares?
And
the fact that if he hates him privately but is willing to support him publicly, then what are we even talking about?
Well,
here?
we're talking about hypocrisy.
Yeah,
that's why we're talking about the hypocrisy, and that's worth mentioning.
Well, it
would be nice too if he lived in Michigan. That I think would be your bottom line on someone that's running for Senate here is to live here. I only saw clips of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I thought that, Slotkin was just like staring at the camera and nailing it, bit by bit. And then Mike Rogers is doing his dismissive Republican man thing. And I think she's going to do well because,
the coming back to the abortion issue, Rogers kept saying this is not an issue because Michigan has spoken. It's like this is the exact and Trump's going around going, everybody wanted this returned to the states. It's like, P.S. nobody wanted it returned to the states. Exactly. But I mean, that is exactly what's the argument over slavery was about. Let's let each state decide. And it's like, how did that work out for the country when we did it that way? I mean, I'm not saying we're going to fight a civil war over abortion, but the idea that
we might. The whole Supreme Court, the whole decisions that we've seen overturning Roe versus Wade, question Griswold, question the underpinnings of all civil rights cases.
Yes.
I'm not so sure that if you send back to Georgia or South Carolina, you're not going to get a vote that says, hey, slavery was great for us, great industry, we need labor. I'm telling you that anything is possible in this post-truth world.
Yeah.
All the assumptions are gone. The judiciary is a joke. The Supreme Court has become just ridiculously absurd and corrupted. Anything can happen. So I'm not dismissive of the possibility that if that states' rights, oh my God, we need those, that they will turn back the clock to 1835. And it terrifies me. And it's I think it's a possibility.
Imagine getting on the airport being in like the Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta, a woman with your 16-year-old daughter. And it's like, you're traveling to Detroit, Michigan with a teenager? Perhaps step behind this curtain here. We'd like you to pee onto this pregnancy stick. I mean, it's just, it's repulsive. Go ahead.
Nancy, you said something, and I think it's time we talked about it, especially after what Trump has said this week. You say we're not going to fight a civil war over fill in the blank. I'm not so sure that's true.
Maybe we will.
I started off as a guy who protested and threw some bricks and acted the way I acted when I was young. But I became an attorney. I fought in the courtroom. Okay.
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic.
You kind of asked for that, Bill. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Huel. You didn't need to add to the problem.
Brother man.
But look, I want to make this clear to Trump and his supporters. Given his definition of the enemy within, I'm the enemy within.
Yeah.
And if people think that I'm not willing, and most people like me aren't willing to fight a fight to try and save what we believe is important in this country, they ain't paying attention.
Right.
I get that I'm an old man, but I'm a wily old guy. And
we have less to lose.
I'm not willing to sit by and allow Trump and his supporters to steal our institutions. I hope it never comes to that, because I believe the right place to have a revolution is at the ballot box. But I'm not willing to allow this to go on. I am, according to Trump's definition, I'm an enemy within.
Right.
Right.
And I am willing to fight.
Right.
But there's a cold civil war already going on. It's just not hot yet, and it's going to get hot. But there's the disparity and the polarity is defined. There is a civil war. We don't get along. We disagree. We make villains of each other. So there is a cold civil war that can easily spark into something that is very hot.
Let's not forget that FEMA had to pull its teams out of Western North Carolina this week because of misinformation and rumors that they were going around confiscating private property, in the name of the hurricane cleanup. So
it just goes beyond that. There are white nationalist groups who have gone down to the hurricane areas to do good works, so they get some publicity. That terrifies me as well, and that's what FEMA's scared of. These armed militias literally going to hurricane sites to build goodwill.
And say, hey, those guys are okay. Yeah, right.
They're all right. They help me.
Yeah.
Let's take a little break here, a quick commercial break.
Got nervous about
Hello. I'm excited to remind you that Tuesday, November 5th is Election Day. And whether you vote by absentee ballot, at one of our early vote centers, or on Election Day, there are 3 easy ways to vote the partisan section of your ballot. 1, vote straight party ticket by filling in the oval next to the party of your choice. And that's it. 2, you can vote a split ticket by voting for the party of your choice and then selecting candidates in various offices from different political parties. Or 3, vote a mixed ticket by voting for candidates in different political parties across the ballot.
And
neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be. All because I live in Detroit.
Just a reminder that Janice Winfrey now has to pack heat following the 2020 election. I think she was one of the people who said, yep, I got my CPL and I am strapped. So that's just a reminder of what these people left behind the last time.
I think people would be surprised at how many liberals, leftists have guns.
Yeah, but I mean, she had a specific.
No, she had to do it for that reason,
right? Because people were accusing her of rigging the election.
Well, one little point I want to make too.
Go ahead.
In relation to Bill is that this: if indeed the first shot in the Civil War is fired, it will come from white Christian nationalists. Just that the first shot in the Civil War was fired by South Carolina.
Absolutely,
it was fired by those who wanted slavery.
Yeah.
If there is a civil war, it will be fired by conservatives, by white Christian nationalists who see this as their right to once again control the country and the people in it. So, but I'm hoping it won't happen.
And isn't that consistent with what everybody knows Jesus taught?
I think you can't underestimate the women and young women right now are the ones, and we talked earlier about data instead of polling. Young women are registering to vote, and they see very clearly what they're talking about pregnancy trackers or menstruation trackers at your gynecologist.
Right.
And they talk about these things, and I'm really hoping that they come out and they vote right. I think the situation in Gaza is kind of skewing that number, and that upsets me really more than I can say. But I think that women. Revolution is going to be violent if it happens. He's right. Let's go with that.
Can we just take one because we're I'm about to pivot us to the grim, blood-soaked, dust-strewn Middle East. But before I do, I want Steve to show me the rest of his T-shirt. Is that does that say straight out of Mumford? Yes. As soon as I saw straight, I knew it was going to be straight out of somewhere.
We have an annual first Saturday in August. We have a big, huge gathering behind Bobby and Junior High, and a lot of times fellows bring different shirts. I've got a whole bunch of them. Mumford Phys Ed, straight out of Mumford, right off of 8 Mile, off of OFFA. You know,
Right.
we weren't very good spellers at Mumford either. Amongst them, we were good basketball players, but we weren't much at spelling.
I just want, we have a video we can set up, which Nancy sent me. And I think one of the issues for Kamala has been, you know, with attracting men and black men. And here is a macho, which I think the campaign needs some machismo here. And here's
a lot of men seem to think that Donald Trump is some kind of tough guy. He's not. I mean, look at him. He wears more makeup than Dolly Parton. He whines like a baby. The guy's afraid of birds. Donald Trump had his daddy pay a doctor to say his Will feet hurt so he could dodge the draft. Look at that gut, like a garbage bag full of buttermilk. He sells imaginary baseball cards pretending to be a cowboy fireman. The guy's barely strong enough to hold an umbrella. I mean, look how he drinks water. Like a little pink chickadee.
It's a great commercial.
It goes on for about 2 minutes, and it's very, very funny. So, and so true. But anyway, all right, let's pivot away from politics. Let's pull our focus back and zoom in on, as I said before, the blood-soaked, dust-strewn Middle East. Quite a few events in the last few days that we need to look at here. Of course, there was the bombing of the Israeli bombing of some refugee camps, but that was quickly eclipsed by the fact that yesterday or the day before, the IDF was able to finally hit. Help me with the name.
Sinwar. Sinwar.
Yeah, exactly.
Sinwar.
Sinwar. That was it. Who was allegedly the architect of the October 7th attack by Hamas.
I think you can say he was. Allegedly, he's not going to sue.
Well, he's dead, so you know. So anyway, so let's talk about this. This is always a hot topic with our troika and everybody and anybody else. Allan, you're the peacemaker here. You're the dove. What do you make of this of this last few days?
Well, I mean, as far as Sinwar, I mean, it's, you know, who knows who's in charge. You know, some of the Israelis are saying, well, this is an opening, and he was, you know, and some say he was, you know, stumbling block as well as Netanyahu. The question is, we don't know. I mean, it's a possibility. Biden is suddenly reaching out to Qatar and saying, let's get this thing rolling here. Here's an opportunity. I don't know. I think, you know, the problem is that that Israel should have been done with Gaza, even whether they got Sinwar or not. They should have been done already. Figured out something to get out of there. I mean, it's just, you know, it's right at this point. I was talking to a guy who used to be in Israeli intelligence. I mean, he's an older man now, but he said the war is over there. He goes, it's just guerrilla warfare, and that could go on forever, and there's no good to come of it. The Biden administration, I think rightfully so, has put pressure on Israel to get humanitarian aid up there. And, you know, the interesting thing is with Sinwar, there are a lot of people who are pissed at him in Gaza over what has happened, whether they believe in the cause or not. They're pissed at what has happened. And I found it interesting. I was curious, the Arab American News, which is based in Dearborn, how they were going to cover the death of Sinwar. With Nasrallah, Osama Simblani, the publisher, was at a rally and praised Nasrallah as a hero, as a freedom fighter. They have not put up anything on Sinwar, and I think they're trying to figure out, how do we play this? You know, as far as what's going on in Lebanon now, you know, there have been bombings in hospitals, which is, you know, you have to condemn that. At the same time, you have to, my feeling is you have to condemn Hezbollah if they're operating in, you know, if they're setting up things in the hospital and fighting out of the hospital or storing arms or whatever. It's a mess. I mean, both sides, we have two extremists. We have extremists everywhere. And we need to have some prevailing
sanity.
Sanity there.
Okay.
So that's
Steve.
kind of my.
Steve.
Me?
Yeah. Didn't you have your finger up before?
Yeah, I try to summarize it a little bit quicker than that. Number one, there are going to be some people, but the world in general is not going to mourn the death of Yahya Sinwar because he's a terrorist. I mean, he's been a terrorist since they let him out of prison. He was in prison in Israel for homicide. He did 20 years, and then he got released when they transferred, 200 people in return for one soldier, Gilad Shalit. But at the same time, we are up against, I haven't said anything different from the beginning of this thing. As long as Netanyahu is in charge there will be no peace. There will be no accounting for how October the 7th last year happened, because it's his fault. It's under his administration. Look what happened to Golda Meir back in 1967. So this guy continues to do what he's doing, and it doesn't matter what Biden says. He's not listening to Biden. There's only one thing the Americans can do: withhold arms. If they withhold arms, then that might do something. But it's very difficult for people to really accept the fact that the Israel today, since Netanyahu, 20 years in power, with the exception of a few little moments, the Israel today is not the Israel that existed when Joel and I were young, where you looked at it as a place of, my God, it's a democracy in the middle of whatever, and you just looked at it a lot differently. This guy is not that way, and he's already saying here, well, maybe everybody's saying there'll be a chance for the hostages, maybe there'll be negotiations. He ain't doing anything different. And I just think that as long as he's in charge, which he is, and they're not calling elections, nothing's going to change. It'll just be different places being bombed and different people dying and more aid workers and more kids. And that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. I think one of the problems here is also the election, that Netanyahu is taking advantage of the election coming up. And, he did this. He was a bully with Obama. He tried to take advantage of Obama. He tried to bully him around. And Trump pretends to stand up for him, but Trump gave him everything he wanted. And now here it is. He knows what's happening with the election, and he's taking advantage of it.
Right.
I think once the election happens, if Harris is to win, hopefully they can start to grab him by the scruff of the neck and say, look, cut the fucking bullshit out. He has no plan for peace. And that's the problem. They say in Haaretz, all he wants is, from war comes more war with him. He has no plan in Gaza. He has no plan, in Lebanon, supposedly, pushing people back to the previous UN resolution there. But he's just all about keeping his job. And that's the sad. People are dying. It's a tragedy,
Bill.
Everybody knows my views on these issues, so I'm not going to get back into them. But I agree. We talk about extremism on both sides. One of the problems is who is going to lead whatever's left of Gaza, whether it's Hamas or the Palestinian people, which would be my preference, obviously, because nobody's ever given a shit about them, including Hamas, which is an Islamic organization, not a Palestinian organization.
Exactly.
The problem with just saying there's extremism on both sides is that we at the United States government are only arming and providing military aid to one side of those extremists. And that creates what's going on with bombing tent camps, with bombing hospitals, destroying church mosques and educational institutions. I have one distant cousin who's still in Gaza, and I've seen some pictures from his cell phone. This is heartbreaking, and it's not stopping. And for the first time, I'm trying to figure out why we give him 30 days. 30 days. If you don't let more aid into Gaza within the next 30 days, how many women and children are going to starve in the next 30 days waiting? Yeah. I know it's politically untenable, but I think that even everybody on this show would agree. We should have said, you have 5 days. And if you don't, we're going to stop aid. We'll continue it after you make sure that the aid's getting in. I mean, this is not crazy stuff. This is what the Geneva Convention requires. It requires that they provide food and water to non-combatants. They're not doing that. And this is horrific. I've always taken the position, you want to end this war, you want to end the problem or solve the problem in the Middle East, you need to have a Marshall Plan. You need to go in, you need to give Palestinians the hope. That's what causes them to turn to organizations like Gaza. They have no place else to turn for help, for food, for shelter. And so what you're doing is aiding the war to go on for another couple of generations. That's my view. Very
Exactly.
sad.
A lot of despair.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. Okay, then let's pivot from one grim topic to another one. I think a lot of us were very shocked by the homicide in Rochester Hills a few days ago of the two men who posed as DTE workers to get into the house of a Rochester Hills pawn shop owner, took him to the basement, killed him, tied up his wife, and then absconded. I thought those guys would be in the wind for quite some time, but they were able to make arrests pretty quickly in this case. We got these criminal lawyers here. Go ahead, Bill. What's your take on this?
No, they made one arrest, and I'd like Steve to get.
No, they've made two.
I got two.
Yeah, the second guy was.
When was the other arrest?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Well, they charged him yesterday, but they caught him they caught him in a traffic stop in Plymouth Township several days ago.
The other guy took off was arrested in
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Yeah.
And the other one was local. But I mean, as soon as I heard that, I thought there's way more to this story. Maybe it was just, go ahead, Steve.
I think that this was one of the unique stories that caught everybody's attention. And for me, all the years I've been doing this and all the guys I've been around who are capable of doing a lot of things, I never, ever said something to my wife like, if anybody ever comes around here, my wife is pretty streetwise as well. But if anybody ever comes around here but pretending to be so-and-so and such, just make sure you don't open the door. I thought about those things before, but this case, I think, really got a lot of people's attention for that reason. What it appears to me, though, now that Bouchard has been talking more about what went on, it sounds to me like either they followed the guy. The guy was targeted because of his business, pawn shop, cash money. They think they could get a lot of dough. And it was at least speculated in one. I don't know if that was Mike saying that or if it was in the newspaper article that they actually followed him from the pawn shop home. And that's how they happened to get to the guy, because otherwise it'd be kind of difficult to know for sure, is he going to be there? Know for sure what the address is. The thing that I don't understand is why did they, if they're there to rob, why would you take him in the basement and beat him to death, which is, I guess, what basically happened. I mean, they kill him, and that's just not usually what thieves do. Thieves steal. They tie people up. They want the stuff, and they didn't really get hardly anything, it doesn't sound like, out of there. So maybe there's still something else to it that might come out. But I will tell you this. Mike Bouchard, I think, does a real good job as sheriff in Oakland County. Yeah. And I like the fact that he's going to be as transparent as possible. I mean, they've been telling us more stuff, because these are the kinds of things that people think about, because we all have Amazon people knocking on the door, this guy knocking on the door, so this is something that the part about the killing part is the part that puzzles me. The part about him being in the pawn shop business, that's what happened to Hutch here in Oak Park.
Right.
Because people think they got dough, and you're dealing with shady characters a lot when you're dealing in the pawn shop business. And I could imagine something like this happening.
Why would you take your cash home, though? I mean, yeah, I could see that they would be after cash, but if it were my pawn shop, and I don't know much about how sleazy this industry is, I think I'd keep it in a very good safe in the pawn shop. I wouldn't keep it in my home, but who knows? Maybe these are not criminals are often not the brightest people in the world. So,
well, no, but wait a minute. We're not saying the pawn shop guy's a criminal. You're saying why would he have money in his house?
Yeah. I'm saying, why would
he probably didn't grow up in Grosse Pointe. See, that's probably one reason. A lot of us in Detroit might have $5 or $10. I can tell you this: I was told when I was told when I was a kid, you always should have $500 in your pocket just in case you have to post bail.
Oh,
you guys in Grosse Pointe, you don't have to worry about that because you're white people and you sit out there and you guys can do whatever you want.
No, I was not saying that the pawn shop owner was dumb. That the criminals were dumb. It's like if I were going to rob a pawn shop owner, I would rob him in the pawn shop because I would think that's where the dough is.
But wait. But Nancy, think about it. Robbing them in the pawn shop. There's people coming in and out of the pawn shop. There's people on the street that see you park the car there. You got to have the getaway.
Well, okay, all right, okay, I get it. So I mean,
my assumption when I heard about the beating was that they were trying to get him to give him a combination to a safe or tell him where the money was hidden.
Yep.
Maybe.
And they couldn't control it. That was my guess. We'll see what happens. I agree with Steve. We'll find out. But
yeah.
Robbers don't.
It is a lesson. It is a lesson to people who are like you, Nance. Who are squares. It's a lesson that not everybody out there in the world is a square. So we don't leave our doors open. We don't leave our keys in our car. People raised in the city. We don't live the way you guys live out there, where everybody's doors are wide open and all that stuff.
I have covered, and I used to cover the police when I had a little website, hyperlocal news website. I used to do the police runs. I am shocked at how dumb people are in Grosse Pointe. My favorite was the guy who broke into the house. Actually, he didn't even break in. He walked in. He walked in through an open door, okay, and walked through the house into the garage where he found a brand new Buick Enclave with the keys in it in the garage. So all he had to do was hit the garage door opener and drive out. I've got a new car.
There we go.
That happens a lot around here. But I'm told by my friends in Birmingham that it happens there too. So it's not.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Yeah. So So anyway, okay. Before we go to the last segment, I want to give Huel a chance to talk here about his. Well, let's play that video that you.
Let's play the video first.
Okay.
This is Devin Skillian.
Some news now tonight of a more personal nature. I am currently in my 30th year here at WDIV, and maybe it's the roundness of that number, but I've decided it's time to move on to the next chapter of what has been a most enjoyable and gratifying book. My wife Corey and I laughed that when we came to Detroit in 1995, we thought we would have a cup of coffee and then move on. Well, the waitress kept refilling our cups, and we found a very rich and lovely life here for us and our 4 children, and 2 Kansans feel very much like Michiganders today.
Oh, that's sweet.
The yet another great gentleman departs the local news stage. Huel, did you know Devin?
Yeah, Devin and I know each other.
Okay. Talk a little bit about this guy.
Well, he was at my retirement party 2 years ago. He and Bernie were there, and we talk infrequently. I spoke to him a few weeks ago, texted him when his father died. I knew when Bernie left that there were offers on the table that would be difficult for anyone to refuse. The corporate owners of Channel 4 are trying to get rid of the high-paid and long-standing members of the staff to save money because the internet has eroded the advertising revenue that we used to get from broadcasting. I had hoped that he would stay. I was at Paula Tupman's retirement party, and he told me then, just before we went to the Olympics, that I'm probably going to stay a little while longer, but he wouldn't say how long. And then he made the decision. I'm sure he and Corey planned this days, months, years maybe before we finally knew, but he finally made the announcement. I just said, look, you're a Renaissance man. You do everything well. He's a great anchor, a great communicator. I don't know if you realize he's written more than 20 children's books.
And he's a musician
he's got
too.
a band called Arizona Sun.
Right.
He's a great songwriter.
Yeah.
He's just an all-around wonderful human being, amazingly talented, and all of this area will miss his voice.
When you retired, I was struck by something that you said in your farewell interviews, where you said that you had recently lost a close friend, and you realized that there is way more to life than work, and that once you're in a position where you can enjoy it, where you have your retirement nest egg is fairly secure, and that it would be foolish of you not to do it. And I was, I'm not one of those boomers who thinks that young people are full of shit. I think they're fully capable of doing our jobs, and it's an act of humility and grace to say, "Go ahead, I'm out of here." So that was, I think that's what he did.
Well, the best part is this is what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he also had a good friend, Tom Sorrells, who used to be the weatherman at Channel 4, who said basically the same thing to him. It's always later than you think.
Yeah.
Right. So, he's 62 years old. He's got a lot ahead of him, and we'll hear more of Devin Scillian.
Okay. Steve, you were going to say something?
I was just wondering what Huel was saying, how, you should know when to retire. Does that mean that Sklar and Seikaly and I are all three idiots because we're in our 70s and still working?
As long as
I'm in my 60s and still working, but that's cool.
As long as you love
Steve, if you don't know the answer yet,
Steve, you're my attorney.
We are.
And you love doing what you do. So you don't have to.
Who's going to bail me out when I'm arrested in Grosse Pointe?
Hold on, I want to react to this. Huel, you can't kid me. I used to watch you. You loved what you did.
I did, but I love retirement more.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hope to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, exactly.
When you want to go.
It really doesn't suck at all.
Go ahead.
I want to say that Huel and Devin are sort of the last of a kind as far as anchors. I mean, they really are kind of the Walter Cronkites that we'll long for, that they were so credible and trustworthy and knew how to play it down the middle, even though I know they would have liked to have injected a little opinion here or there, but they were such professionals and really kind of not one of a kind, but the last of a kind, really.
I did not know Devin, but I've talked to him a few times. He's been on this show. I think I was on his Sunday morning show once with my old editor, and he is truly a gentleman. He is a gentleman's gentleman. I mean, he pays attention to you when you talk. You don't get the sense that he's trying to think of the next thing to say. He's really something. So I don't watch a lot of that TV news, but when I see him, he's just got that. He's got that thing going on. That calm presence, and as Huel said, he's good at so many things that he's just one of the lucky ones. So anyway, so let's pivot 180 degrees from a true gentleman to.
Well, hold on.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
You ruined my segue.
I'm sorry.
That may be the worst segue I've ever seen.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I apologize. Bill Seikaly sent this little thing about Kamala, how she handled the heckler.
Did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. You meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Good work.
All right. Now,
all right,
serve it up again. Ready?
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Smart of the Week.
Once again, the list is so long, but let's start with our guest, Huel. Who's your schmuck this week?
Well, Brett Baer.
Yeah, good for you.
I've done difficult interviews before as well, and not to say that Brett did a terrible job, but only now is he admitting that he made a mistake with the clip he ran. Donald Trump talked about using the National Guard and the military to attack his enemies. He ran a clip instead in which Trump was saying, "Oh, well, no, that's not what we made." No, the original clip made it clear that Trump was going to use the military to make sure his will was followed in this country. So that's my schmuck of the week. But I will give him some grace because, again, in the world of Fox News, he is the only one, I think, who has some semblance of fairness.
Yeah,
Fox News was created by the evil genius of Roger Ailes to give this country, or the people in this country, who were already racist and vile, news tempered in a way that would justify their beliefs. And it worked. That's how they make their money and continue to make their money, even though they've been successfully sued for lying. They still do it time and time again because that's how they're getting rich.
That's their brand. So you're absolutely right. So, okay. Barb.
Well, I think we all had that same schmuck this week because, and I do think he did. I think they did it on purpose. I don't think it was a mistake. I think he ran that, and his apology came too late because to his people, they all saw that. I think she handled herself well, but I guess there's a lot of them this week. I want to go with Microsoft, who is restarting 3 Mile Island, the nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island, in order to help power AI. They need more. Google is also talking about starting nuclear reactors. What could go wrong? I mean, really, and I'm of an age where I couldn't sleep for weeks when that was going on. I remember that, and that was just so terrifying to see what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and then the eternal carpetbagger Mike Rogers is my other one. But yeah, I'm sticking with restarting 3 Mile Island.
Yeah, that's kind of, especially talk about something nobody asked for in the first place. I mean, I know that there are journalism organizations that use AI now to write simple stories. And in fact, one of my alma maters, the Columbus Dispatch, actually ran one where it said and then bracket insert name of winning team here, pounded the insert name of losing team here in insert score in an insert score here, and it accidentally got up on the website and everybody was embarrassed. But that's that's just what I want 3 Mile Island restarted for. Take another job away from a sports intern at a newspaper. But okay,
you can just say Mitch Albom wrote it. It would be the same thing.
Okay, Steve.
Mine is pretty simple. I don't know if you guys saw the 38 minutes of Trump kind of bopping at that crowd where they didn't want to talk. But my schmuck of the week is Kristi Noem. I mean, she's almost schmuck of the decade between murdering the dog and her normal behavior. But standing there, and it was absolutely unbelievable. I think if you brought any of our parents back to life who lived in a normal time and they saw this woman doing that, and you said, that woman is the governor of a state, they would have said, put me back in the ground. I mean, are you kidding me? There's no fucking way she's the governor of any state, even that shitty state. Okay? So to me, just the smiling and the clapping like she was a cheerleader at a Castech football game. As I'm watching, I'm thinking, I'm going on Friday, and you just won the award, no matter what anybody else does for the rest of the week. So Kristi Noem, you did it too. You did
All right. That was
and by the way, for the fear of 3 Mile Island, go back and listen to Gil Scott-Heron sing that song, We Almost Lost Detroit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And his other great song, Whitey on the Moon.
Yeah, he had a lot more than that of great songs.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Phil.
Yeah, mine's a little different this week. My schmucks of the week are those one-issue people who have decided they can't vote for Kamala Harris because, and they have one reason, and they're either going to not vote or vote for Trump. A lot of those are friends of mine, oftentimes around the Middle East, Muslims, Palestinians, other Arabs who say, no, I can't vote for these people. They're allowing genocide. If they think Trump's going to be better, they have their head in a part of their anatomy that they don't really want it. Look, I don't like the way that this administration has handled the issues in the Middle East, but I think that we'll have no ability to move the needle with Trump, and you'll have some ability to move the needle with Harris. And I think that to throw away our democracy on any one issue is foolhardy. If you've decided I'm going to vote for Trump because of food prices, wait until he gets rid of all the farm workers.
Yeah,
exactly. So I'm begging people who are voting on one issue like that against Harris to rethink that. Can I do one other thing? Layla, who doesn't appear to be, who's one of our regulars, doesn't appear to be on, had a birthday yesterday, and I want to do a shout out to her and say happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
All right.
Happy birthday,
Layla. Okay. Joel.
I'm going to go with Elon Musk. I can't stand him to begin with, but to see him 3 inches off the ground at the Trump rally was wonderful. My father, I would ask him, how do people become so wealthy? Is it wisdom? Is there some great knowledge? He goes, no, it goes, wealth and wisdom have no equality. They mean nothing. Because you're wealthy doesn't mean you're wise. Because you're wise doesn't mean you're going to be wealthy. He's, and Elon Musk has mastered making money in, whatever he's doing, but his knowledge of the world, of how people, the human condition is no greater than ours. And to defer to a guy like that, again, Trump's going to make him, I think, like in the Department of Cost Cutting, God knows what he'll cut. But to embrace that man and have him embrace Trump, 2 men of the same, cloth, he's my schmuck. And these guys are, again, we're giving so much deference to wealth in this country, and it means nothing other than the accumulation of something. It doesn't mean wisdom. It doesn't mean smarts. And it really pisses me off that we give so much credence to that when it deserves very little.
Beautiful.
So that's my
Steve
schmuck.
Fishman
Amen.
in his 70s has a better vertical jump than Elon Musk, I think. So
Much better.
There you go. Yeah. So
Musk looks like a Bond character with that dark shirt, and he looks like an evil Bond character.
Red and his have you ever seen him with his shirt off? That pasty white. Ooh, God.
Ugh.
Oh, interesting.
Lengel.
I'm going to go with Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, who's trashing Dan Campbell, calling him classless for running up the score down in Dallas.
Oh,
and a sports writer who wrote about it said, "I'm sorry, but I had such a great experience with Dan Campbell. I thought he was the classiest guy around." Look, they put in, at some point, they put in the second string quarterback. They put in some of the second string linemen and quarterbacks, all that. So I think Chris Christie's just full of shit. He's a Dallas fan. I don't know how that happened, but
Yeah, how did that happen? God, the guy is a governor of New Jersey. Oh, okay. All right. Chris Christie. All right. Mine is, I have to I'm going to make this as brief as possible because I know we're running over, but there's an event that happens in New York City. I think it's every year, but it might be every 4 years, called the Al Smith Dinner, which is a charity. It's a white tie event, charity or fundraiser for Catholic charities. It's put on by the Archdiocese of New York. And in presidential years, the candidates from each party are invited to come in and do a little 10-minute stand-up at the microphone. The mood is we can all get along. We have more in common than divides us. The understanding is that the humor will be gentle. You can poke at your opponent, but it has to be done in a spirit of goodwill. Self-deprecation is encouraged. And if you want to see the platonic example of how this event is supposed to run, I encourage you to go on YouTube and look up the 2016 event when Mitt Romney and Barack Obama did their thing. And Obama had probably the best line of the night where he said, turning now to my opponent, most people don't know that Mitt is his middle name. And then he, with his excellent timing, he goes, I wish I could use my middle name. But anyway, in 2016, Trump broke the mold. He got up and he looked like Bigfoot in a tailcoat, and he laid one egg after another that he clearly thought were comic gems. And I think people were laughing in disbelief more than in genuine humor. Last night was the dinner. Trump got up again and he used profanity. He wasn't funny. His jokes sounded like they had been written by Stephen Miller, or maybe Barron and Stephen Miller together. He ruined it. And, this was an event that kind of symbolized what we claim we all want, which is, can we all just get along? And it's like in the great tradition of everything Trump touches dies, he wrecked the Al Smith dinner. And it just made me think about, there's now a whole generation of young people who have grown up thinking this is what politics are. This is what government is. Mm-hmm. And I could weep to think of how long it's going to take us to dig our way out of this this hole that we found.
Jim Gaffigan spoke, and he
was the MC.
And he made a little comment, and I can't remember quite what, but he basically said, "Yeah, who knew we've got a presidential candidate who's got issues with grabbing kitties."
Yeah, That joke kind of fell flat from what I understand.
Yeah, well, it was kind of like, you know, in Melania, it was like,
this is the Archbishop of New York City. Right?
Yeah, and he goes, you know, I'm kind of scared. He goes, I've never been in a civil war before. He goes, I don't have a musket. I don't know what do we do?
You're a big fan of stand-up, so you would love it.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, I want to wrap things up because I have somewhere I have to be. Thanks to everybody who showed up today. Thanks to the Troika, Joel, Steve, and Bill Seikaly. Thanks so much from of our special guest, Huel Perkins, who is a perfect gentleman.
Wonderful.
Thanks to Barbara. Thanks to me for stepping in for Saeed. And with the last word we always go to, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
There you go, big man.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Thank you, Huel.